Carol Lee is a White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. She's in our Washington bureau. Carol, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, we'll get to the Paris Accords and James Comey's testimony in a moment, but let's start with the president's comments on London. In one tweet, he used the word ban, even though the White House says the executive order is not a ban. What did you read into the president's response?
Well, I think he's saying what he has called it a ban before. It's his aides who have disputed whether or not it's a ban and saying that it's not. The reason the president was drawing this link between what happened in London and then call it the need to, what he says is to have his travel ban implemented, is because there's a decision in the Supreme Court that could come in the next few days about whether or not the court will allow the president's ban to proceed temporarily while they consider whether or not to allow it permanently, meaning they have a longer-term decision to make, and what the administration has asked the Supreme Court to do is to basically give the president a reprieve while they sort out the issues on that case. And so the president, knowing that that's coming up, is obviously going to try to draw attention to the ban and draw a link. The problem that the president has with drawing the link between London and his travel ban is that it's not necessarily clear that the travel ban of the sort that the president has tried to implement would prevent an attack like the one in London.
Carol, we heard Scott Pruitt and Nikki Haley avoiding the question of whether the president believes in climate change. Switching gears here for a moment. Politically speaking, is this something the White House will have to answer in the long run?
It is, but I think it's something that the president's going to have to answer, because we've asked a number of officials in the administration and the White House what the president's view is on this, if he believes it's a hoax, and they've either dodged the question, or the most clear recent answer we got was from Ambassador Haley, where she said that the president does believe that, is aware that there's climate change and that some man-made factors contribute to it. She didn't go as far as to confirm what the president said before, that he believes climate change is a hoax, but she found this middle ground, and mostly because that's the line I think that the administration would like the president to take, and it also it would be hard for them to take a different position. For instance, if he were to say it was a hoax, given that the president is also saying that he would like to renegotiate elements of the Paris Climate Accord, which no one actually thinks will happen, but that's at least his position. But we've seen time and again where the president's aides will say one thing, and you then have to wait for the president to see what he actually thinks, because he'll either contradict them or perhaps say something that is different than they would have expected.
All right, let's go and talk about James Comey if we can. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer wouldn't rule out using executive privilege to restrict Comey's testimony. Would you really expect White House to do something like that?
Well, it sounds more and more like they will not invoke executive privilege, although everything with this White House should come with a caveat that this president is known to change his mind and could choose to do that. If he were to invoke executive privilege, it would certainly set off a political firestorm around that. There are a lot of legal experts who believe that the president waived executive privilege because he talked about his private conversations with Director Comey in public, and that in doing that, he has given Director Comey the space to talk about his version of those conversations publicly. So in terms of the Director Comey's hearings, there'll be that piece of things, and I think that the other thing people are looking for is, if he says anything further about the actual investigation into Russia's meddling in the election and potential ties between Trump campaign associates and the Russian government. But in terms of the narrow issue of the president's conversations with Director Comey and whether there was any pressure that the president put on Director Comey, it's looking more and more like the White House will not try to invoke executive privilege to stop him from testifying.
All right, a final question for you, Carol. We know the White House is assembling a war room to respond to the Russian investigations. What kind of test does Comey's testimony pose for that operation? Well,
it'll be the first big test that they've faced. There's some hearings scheduled for Wednesday as well that are a little less high profile, but the Comey hearing is going to be one in which this idea of creating a war room to respond directly to what is happening in the Russia investigation is the first big test for them on Thursday for sure.
All right, Carol Lee in Washington. Carol, thank you.
Thank you.